I'm quite nervous because it's the first time my story has been at the heart of a talk I've given. I find it easy to talk about Stretch and the work I do with other prisoners, but it's harder to find the words to describe my own journey and how I got here. It feels like this is an auspicious time. It is exactly by accident 16 years to the day since I was arrested. 14th of October 1997 in Los Angeles, I was arrested and placed into custody the day after. So how did a nice, well-brought-up girl like me end up in prison? And why have I forged a career in the welfare of prisoners? I'm the youngest of 3 children, born to quite liberal parents, raised in a leafy Manchester suburb. I drifted a bit as a teenager. I was given quite a free rein. I was soon drinking, smoking dope, all that. I had a huge appetite for getting high, which I wore as a badge of honour. I was going to the Hacienda nightclub 3 or 4 times a week, skipping school, dating drug dealers, lying to my parents regularly. It didn't feel like crime because everyone was having such a good time. Over the next few years, things did turn darker, but I didn't really notice because I was so busy getting high. I went off to university and I massively underachieved there. It was just an excuse to party hard in London. After university, I was in a pretty low place. I knew someone who had a successful empire, importing and exporting drugs, and I agreed to act as a mule. Unbeknown to me, the guy who put me on the plane was already being followed by the police. In fact, he was stopped with my flight details on him. When I landed at LAX, they knew that I was on that plane and were waiting for me. I was a lamb to the slaughter, like so many drug mules are. They took me to the Metropolitan Detention Centre, where I spent the next 8.5 months. For the first few months, I thought, and I was told, that I could be there for 10 years. I was in shock, but it did soon become clear that I was one of the lucky ones there. I watched other inmates arrive, and they had nothing, and no one to support them. I had a constant stream of letters, phone calls, books to read, even a few visits. My parents came 3 times, and friends of the family even dropped in to support me. The routine medical at the prison had shown me to be pregnant. Another massive thing for us all to deal with. My mum was even making plans to come and live in a trailer park near the prison and raise the baby if I couldn't get to go home. But a lot of things were happening behind the scenes, and I was lucky they caught the guy that put me on the plane, and I could make a deal, him for me. My parents remortgaged the house and put up $30,000 bail, and I was allowed to come home. Once back home, I concentrated on trying to put it all behind me. I was told the crime would only stay on my record in the US, and it was before CRB checks had really come in, so I just concentrated on being a new mum, and I trained to be a teacher. Around the time I was finishing my teacher training, CRB checks were rife, and suddenly I was having to explain myself and have people judge me and apologise for my crime. I was thinking a lot about prisoners at this time. I was volunteering in a local prison. I'd already wanted to put something back, but I wasn't telling anyone what had happened to me, not unless I had to. Eventually, a teacher training agency reported me to the Home Office, and I had to fight to keep my name off List 99, a list for people not allowed to work with vulnerable groups. I was fine. I had a stack of really good references, but I was shocked that a serious drugs offence was classed as serious as a violent or sexual offence. I had started to study for an MA in museum education, and one of the projects was to do something socially aware. So I decided I wanted to take a group of prisoners from Ascombe Grange Prison to Yorkshire Sculpture Park and write about it. I got funding from the Arts Council, and so Stretch was born. And that's 10 years ago this September, which is another auspicious anniversary. It made perfect sense at the time. I did what a lot of ex-offenders do, which is start their own business, because they don't want to have to keep explaining their criminal record to everyone. I didn't want people judging me straight away. Stretch set about to involve the offending community with museum and gallery education. I was bringing together my personal interests in the arts and culture and my growing obsession with the welfare of prisoners. But I still wasn't being honest with most people about why I was working with prisoners. It was very much on a need-to-know basis, as I was worried that prisons wouldn't let me in if they knew about my past. Of course, the criminal record checks found me in the end, and some of the prisons said it was impossible for me to work there anymore. I felt really hurt and annoyed that prisons wouldn't let me in. They claimed they were practicing rehabilitation, and surely I was the living embodiment of rehabilitation. I made a decision about 2 years ago to start to be more honest about my past and to approach prisons as an ex-offender. If the prison didn't want me, it was their loss. And it's been very much down to the individual cultures at different prisons as to whether they have me there or not. This new honesty had to include everyone, even my own children. Obviously, it'd be no good if they found out through newspapers or through a work project. My 2 older girls, who were 14 and 10, took it really well. Children, I think, give you a very straightforward feedback. They wear their moral barometer on their sleeve, as it were. So I could see the thought process going on in my 10-year-old. She thought prisons were full of bad people. I said they are, on the whole, full of normal people who have been caught making a bad decision. And I could see her thinking, well, Mum isn't a bad person, so she must be right. Prisoners are not bad people. And she accepted it straight away. And I'm glad she won't really ever have that knee-jerk reaction now about prisoners, I hope. My experience was so obviously the driving force behind what I do. The older one, the teenager, said, well, that explains your obsession with prisons then. And oh, by the way, you can never tell me off again. Over the years, stretch projects have covered a lot of different art forms: sculpture, photography, fashion and painting. And the last 18 months have seen me working on digital storytelling in prisons, which has taken me right to the heart of the prison community and fueled my passion to work with them in creative ways even more. At the heart of what we do is the forming of a supportive group, especially with the women. They really feed off each other and relish an opportunity to talk about themselves and their experiences, to express themselves in a new way. It's almost as if no one has ever really asked them before or listened to them when they did. I do think I have a good rapport with the prisoners. I can engage them and get through to them in a way that some interventions cannot. Women in prison need care and compassion that is being overlooked in the latest prison reforms. So I really want to pose the question, what is being done to fill this deficit of care? And who is listening to the real voice of the women prisoners? I thank you all for listening, and I hope we can come up with some answers.
I just wanted to say well done to have the courage to stand up and share your story so honestly to some of these people that you don't really know. I think that takes a huge amount of courage, and it does make a difference in terms of, I think, of people changing their perceptions about people who are in prison. I mean, because I also now work within a prison, so I see how how stigma and language and everything is up against people.
Hello, obviously I'm Lizzie, I'm 22 and unfortunately I've been to prison 5 times. I've only been out a month, so this is not something I normally do, so I'm basically here to say what it's like in prison and what benefits there are in prison and what benefits there are outside of prison. I think people that haven't been to prison don't really understand what it's like to be in prison. It's a very isolated place, it's very lonely, it's just horrible. I wouldn't want anyone to ever go there. For me, personally, I've actually had a good experience in prison. I got a lot of help. I was an addict, I was this, I was that, and prison helped me. I had different therapy courses, mental health help with my self-harm, help with my other issues. But then as soon as I get released into the outside, that's it, boom, you're left on your own. And it's quite a scary thing. You get so much support in prison, I don't think people really understand that. And then when you come outside, you're just left to fend on your own really, and it's quite hard. And obviously I met Carlotta in Bronzefield, she come and done the stretch project, and that was amazing to have like a small group of women to disclose their stories about addictions, their crimes, all joined together to make such beautiful films was amazing. And it's nice to actually have someone there that's actually experienced going to prison. Because you always get the cliche of, oh, I know how you feel, or oh, I understand, but actually no one does unless they've actually experienced it. Whereas Carlotta, she did experience it, and it was really nice to have someone to relate to and have someone to talk to.
Just picking up on Lizzie's point there, that it's when you leave that behind, what is there? And I don't know whether the projects that are happening in prison can continue afterwards, because there's obviously has to be a focus on skills, transferable skills that people can use to go on to employment, but that idea of expressing yourself and being able to find out who you really are and share it with others. You know, my question really is there a place for all that to continue outside with the, you know, the contacts that you all provide?
In Hibiscus we have a resettlement and community program, and so all of our clients that we meet in prison, we would encourage them to get in touch with us after release. Lots of our clients who are released into community, and those women especially, they face lots of challenges.
Our ethos really, if you like, the overriding arch is to reduce reoffending. But to say that that's a nice term, but as teachers we really do believe that. For us, if you see the teachers there, it is a difficult environment to work in. As you've talked about, a lot of the women that go in are drug addicts. A lot of the women that go in, they're missing their families, they've had domestic violence, there's mental illness in there. And as teachers, we have to try and teach them. And that isn't always an easy task. But we do it because we really do care and we do want to make a difference. Each teacher there, I see that they have a passion for the women that they're teaching. They want to make a difference. And I can say, for each teacher, if we get one woman who says they don't want to commit a crime again. I remember one woman who said, the first thing I'm going to do when I leave prison is not go and get my crack or my cocaine. I'm going to buy a laminator. And that was really encouraging to us because that meant that we'd made a difference. And that's why we do it, and that's why we're there.
I suppose our overriding view and objective is to get much more coherent public health responses to the kind of problems that women experience in the community. So we feel very much that we need a different range of responses, that there should be facilities in the community, that women shouldn't have to go to prison to access the kind of support and drug and alcohol services that they often end up resorting to prison for, if you like. And that's what we're campaigning for over the next 3 years. We're trying to ensure that there are better options than imprisonment for women who offend.
We must bridge seemingly impossible and humanly hopeless situations. We must have justice, whereby each sees not only his difficulties, but the difficulties of others. And initiatives of change, he said, works towards a prejudice-free living and is open to all.